Hello, kiddies. Meet the Joker.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Joey Galvez here at the MCDC podcast, where we talk about the big two. Except for this week, we're not going to be talking about Marvel. This week, we're going to be talking about DC. And I'm going to actually give you guys 2 weeks worth of DC books. For August 1st, I'm going to talk about Adventures of the Super Sons #1, Justice League #5, Batman #52, and Nightwing #47. And then for August 8th, I'm going to talk about Catwoman #2, Hawkman #3, Superman #2, Detective Comics 986. Possibly not in that order, but those are the books you guys are going to get this week. Hopefully some of these will be pretty good. Some of these were good, some of these were hit and miss, but we'll see how we do it with this way, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this. We'll see you guys soon.
Superboy, the greatest team of kids ever, and it's the greatest book ever. I love it. It's time to do the first storyline.
All right, guys, the Adventures of the Super Sons, they're back. So we've got #1 of a 12-issue maxi series here. We've got Peter J. Tomasi on this one, Carlo Barberi on the pencils, and Art Thibert on the inks, and Photobunker on the colors. I'm horrible at pronouncing people's names. Sorry. Anyway, so this one is actually kind of cool, guys. I really liked the artwork on this one. The story was all right. I mean, if for what it is, it's a fun little story. But I don't know if this one's for me. I don't know if this is going to be something that I jump into. It did interest me, you know, the last few pages there. But I don't know if this one's going to be one of the ones that I really get into. But for what it is, it's actually a pretty cool story here. And I do like what they gave us here. We immediately jump right into the action here. We first open up the page and we see John, and he's got this big cheesy smile, and he's eating some popcorn, and there's debris flying at him and stuff like that. And then you flip the next page and you see that you see Damian Wayne here, and he's fighting a golden statue that looks a whole lot like Superman. And this thing kind of grabs him up, and, you know, a little bit here while John's tearing up his popcorn, and he's like, you know, if you wanted some popcorn, I would have gotten that to you, you know, this, you know, anyway. So this statue kind of, you know, they're kind of fighting it back and forth. John, Superboy here, you know, hits this thing right in the jaw, and kind of Damian Wayne gets loose, and while Damian Wayne is free from the grasp of this statue, you got John there punching it out a few different times. Damian Wayne decides to go figure out who is or what is controlling this thing. So he goes into the area where the statue is on, the foundation of where this statue was sitting upon. And there's a door, and he goes in there, and there's a man in there, and he's controlling this thing, right? So this guy has this little figurine that looks exactly like the statue, and I guess it's moving. It's some weird technology. They don't explain it too much, and they don't go into it a little too much here. But you do see Damian Wayne subdue this guy, ties him up, and, you know, hog ties him, kind of a thing. And then he gets this statue figurine, and he starts moving it around while John is fighting this thing, and punches John in the face. And John's getting, John kind of takes this thing out a little bit. But then there's a moment where this statue kind of hits John, knocks him down, and gives him a 1-2, right? Because Damian Wayne is controlling it at this point, and he's kind of, I don't know, it kind of looks like he's doing it on purpose here a little bit. And then it's about to step on John, and he's like, yeah, cut it out, John says. And then Damon just snaps this thing in half, and it stops midair. Then this thing goes right back to the foundation where it came from. So, then they pull this guy out, and then they kind of have a conversation about what had happened. And they talk about, hey, you were controlling that, you were doing this, right? And then there's a crowd gathered up, and they're like, hey, it's Superboy and that kid I think he used to work with Batman or for Batman, it says. And then that's the puppeteer, he says, so that's this guy's name. And he said, so he's like, hey, the fun's over, let's go to school, this and that. Now we flip to the next page here, and we see somebody with some creepy, sinister looking eyes, and they're hovering over the planet. They're coming around the moon, and they see that the Super Sons are doing something here, and then they say, there she is, engage cloaking, and then the computer says the same thing back, and it says, you guys should get up here. We're approaching the planet, and as our luck would have it, our targets are out and about. Superboy and Robin, children of the world's so-called protectors and enemies of its true heroes. I call them Super Sons. And then it says, soon they will be super dead. Now, this spaceship, or whatever it is, turns on its boosters, and it goes right towards Earth here. Then we flip the page again, and they're at school, and it looks like it could be the last day of school, right before summer. And everybody's, excited. You see John there; he's all super excited for school to be over. And of course, Damian Wayne, being the overachiever, he is the one that he has to be. I don't know if you want to say overachiever, but he has to be the best at everything. So he's even talking to one of his teachers here, and he's telling, oh, did you get my thesis and this and that? And she's like, oh, you didn't have to do that. He's like, well, I expect you to read this over the summer and kind of give me some extra credit kind of thing. So that's we see that. I love that moment, because it showcases his personality. It showcases John's personality here, and I think that part is really cool, and I liked that whole part of this book here. They did get the voices very well here. So a young lady comes up, hey, you guys gonna come over? We're gonna have a little party at my place. And they're like, oh no, we're not gonna do that, we have things to do, this and that. It's like, so. And then you got Alfred picking them up in a helicopter. I thought that was kind of funny. And they're talking about this base that they're building and stuff like that, and it's under Morrison Bay, it says. And John is being super annoying, I guess, in perspective in Damian's perspective, right? Because John is like, yo, summer of super, because they're going to go and start fighting crime, and they're just going to do this team up, right? So he's pretty excited. And he's like, yo, after Kid Amazo tore a hole through the hole, I thought we were never going to get it back together, but it looks great. So I guess that's what happens, right? And he's like, yeah, the Justice League has gone through dozens of HQs, and Father's Company is one of the leaders that's self-repairing structural engineering. So we get a little bit of a background here, and of course you see Damian Wayne there in his Robin suit, and he's building some stuff and putting the computer together or whatever. And so of course John just being a kid and just wanted to do he brings out tons of soda. And he's like, yeah, we got to stock this place and this and that. We get their little personalities here. So now they say they hear of something going on, and they fly out there to go take care of it. In the Mall of Metropolis, there's some crazy creature-looking thing, and he's terrorizing the shoppers there, throwing some cars. There's people inside this car. John catches it. And he's like, oh, I'm well aware of my actions and their end result, because he's like, yo, well, you know what you're doing, right? Kind of thing. So Robin comes in, and he gets hit and blasted by somebody else that's, kind of snuck up on him, kind of because now there's a couple of people here, and they blasted him with some kind of wrapping that and entangled him, and he almost looks like a mummy here. And this big hairy monster thing grabs up John. He gets free, or he throws him across the way, throws him right into Damien, and then he says, let me introduce you to the gang. And then this is when we see who is here. We see tons of villains here, but guess what? They're not just any villains, right? We got this big hairy looking guy, but then that was kind of cool seeing that guy. But these other villains here, this is what kind of threw me off. When I saw this, I was reading the book and I thought, okay, this book is actually pretty good in it, and I'm getting into it. Then I got to this page, and this page is where I was kind of like, what the heck just happened? So front and center, we see a young kid, and then there's 5 kids here that are very similar in age to John and Damien, but they're not just any kids. One of them looks like he is reminiscent of Lex Luthor. Then to his right is someone that looks like the Joker, and then another one looks like Brainiac, and then to their left you got one that looks like Deadshot, and one looks like Captain Cold. So I thought that was weird. So they says you've already met Shaggy Boy, so say hello to Ice Princess, Kid Deadshot, and Brainiac 6, and wouldn't you know it, back from the grave, my bestest pal, Joker Jr. And he says, of course. And then he says, Joker Jr. says, he doesn't need to rewind on my backstory, Rexy. And he says, of course not, JG. I'm sure Superboy has enough questions as it is. For example, why is he being attacked by kids who look like the planet's greatest heroes? So that's they see themselves as heroes anyway. So he says, and what, pray tell, does Rex Luthor have in that mysterious container? Then he opens it up, and it has some gold glowing thing, and it's gold kryptonite. He says, and just what in the world will gold kryptonite do to me? So, Superboy starts grabbing at his chest, and he starts, just like what kryptonite does to his father, gold kryptonite does to him, I believe. So they kind of subdue him a little bit. Joker Jr. had this arm, this glove kind of gauntlet thing on. Now Rex Luthor has it on, and he uses this thing to kind of get them and hit and powers it up. And you see him lunge towards Damien and John, and you see some arms kind of tossed into the air a little bit. It says, don't worry though, it'll only hurt for a second. And that's where we leave off. That's the end. And it says, next, the gang's all here. And that's where, I guess, and that kind of was cool, but I didn't know about all these kids that were dressed up as these villains. I don't know if that really was one of my favorite things there, but it is what it is, right? And that's what I was talking about. It is what it is. So if I were going to give this one a rating, I think I would give this one a 6, just because the artwork and the story was kind of cool up until this point. I did like hearing a little bit of the background of what's been going on, how they're going to continue with this thing. I want to see where this goes. I hope they give us some answers on why these kids are here, where they're coming from. Of course, they had a spaceship, right? So I want to know what's going on with this. So, all right, well, that's going to be my review of The Adventures of Super Sons #1.
Deep within a bleak and dismal swamp, hidden beneath its murky waters, lies the headquarters of the most sinister villains of all time. The Legion of Doom.
All right, our next one's going to be Justice League #5, The Legion of Doom Part 1. This one is written by James Tynion IV, pencils by Doug Mahnke, and inks by Jaime Mendoza, and colors by Will Quintana. This one was actually, for what it was actually pretty good as well. We get a little bit of a glimpse into the future, and Lex Luthor kind of gets some insight on what he needs to do, and we kind of get a little bit of answers here, just a little bit, right? And they kind of keep us, on the edge of our seats, if you want to say something like that, a little bit. But we do get a little bit of answers. We don't see where we left off on the last book, where we saw Martian Manhunter and Superman walking into what we thought was the totality. But we do get some answers and some background on what Lex Luthor is doing here. So we open up with the Scarecrow here, and it looks like he we open up with a handful of people here that we see, right? It says, tears well up in Scarecrow's eyes. We know the world has changed, but he doesn't understand how. It says he's not alone. The echoes can be felt from Arkham Asylum to the desert sky high above Kandak, and unmistakable electricity is in the air, and it shows Black Adam there. And then we got, in hell they feel it too. Neuron nearly drops a finally aged cask of human souls as a shiver runs up his spine, a sensation he has never experienced before. And then it says in this next panel, at the far reaches of the universe, the fire pits of apocalypse spring to its horrifying new heights. And then you get Lex Luthor here with, I don't know if this is a cheesy smile, or he kind of looks like whoever's sitting next to him let one go, and he's finally figuring out what just happened. I don't know, but this is kind of a weird look here. Now we see, he says, because right now at this very moment, Lex Luthor is plotting Superman's body, piloting Superman's body forward step by step, about to achieve everything he has ever dreamed of. He feels the universe tremble beneath him and smiles. That's such a creepy forced smile, guys, just saying. It says, all is as it should be. And then we open up Legion of Doom Part 1, and it shows their little layer here, and it kind of gives us a little bit of a insight of where this thing lies. It says the fortress catches none of the light from the molten rock it sits within. This is by design. The material of its shell was mined in the Scataris in Scataris by the immortal Vandal Savage for its ability to absorb light and heat, rendering itself invisible to radar, satellite, and imagery. A warding incarnation stolen from the spell book of the Felix Faust. Does the rest of the work. So they've given us this little panel telling you why nobody can see this thing, where it's sitting, and I still don't know how it's sitting there and it's not burning. It says a man could stare directly at it with binoculars from the far end of the molten field and see nothing but burning rock. So how is it actually sitting there? I don't know if it's floating or what's going on. How do they even get there? Because there's no way. I don't know. Anyway. And they tell us a little bit about what's going on inside this thing, right? I'm not going to read into that a little bit more, but we're back at the source wall here, and we see Green Lanterns, and they're losing the battle, right? They can't really win this one. Or I mean, they look like they're trying to, but it doesn't really work, right? It says before Doom, and they kind of show us a little bit of what's going on here. It looks like Sinestro and the Yellow Lantern Corps were kind of almost going to team up with the Green Lantern Corps a little bit, because these stone guys in the source wall come to life, and they need to protect it, and they're part of the universe, so they have to team up with the Green Lantern Corps, right? So that seems like it like something that they should do, right? And this is what's going on. And you see that Sinestro there, he says, who dares, because somebody comes behind him. It says, I know what you're thinking. And he says, who dares? And he shoots his ring at him. And you flip the page and you see that it's Lex Luthor. And this thing just kind of doesn't even hurt him, doesn't even faze him at all, right? So he's like, Luthor, how could you be here? And he says, a scientist who used to work for me called it quantum folding, a wrinkling of space-time that would allow you to move from one side of the universe to the next in a single step. He said, it would take thousands of years to become technology viable, so I fired him and systematically decimated his life. It turns out he was right, but all that misses the point entirely. So I guess he figured it out, right? And anyway, so this is how he got there. He used this quantum folding or whatever. And he tells him, you're thinking about taking the lesser path, that your best move is to team with the Green Lantern Corps against to again still the order of the universe rather than listen to your heart. Rather than do what must be done. And he's like, and he says, you presume to know me. And he says, true. I do know the man that the Guardians banished to the antimatter universe. The man who took all his fear and forged it into a weapon that would make the universe shake. I thought that was you. Perhaps I'm mistaken. And he's just very arrogant in this moment, right? Well, we got two arrogant guys here, and they're kind of going back and forth with their stuff, right? So he tells him, what if I could promise you everything you ever wanted, Sinestro? Power to do what while sacrificing nothing. He says, I have always taken what I need. He says, this isn't about what you need, it's about what you want. I know the secrets the Owens have been hiding from you all this time. I unlocked the secret history of the universe in full. I hold the key to it in my pocket. I'm starting a group, Sinestro. Join me and I'll give you the invisible spectrum and more. And he says, I'm listening, right? So now I don't know if we're going flash forward or if we're just kind of going to the next, stage of what's going on here. So we see Lex Luthor here, and he's working on a mother box, and he's trying to do something with this thing here, or so he's creating it looks to me like he's creating some time traveling device, right? And anyway, this thing shoots him, propels him forward to 1 million years from that moment, right? And then you see that there's a big, huge, I guess, this statue of Lex Luthor, and he's got his arms out to the sides of him, and it says, but at the end of time, there were no gods left, only Luthor. And you see tons of people flying. They all have gear on. Some of them are fighting back and forth. Looks like there could be some kind of Justice League in the future or something, because there's some people that are kind of reminiscent to like Cyborg and reminiscent to like a Green Lantern Corps type of thing here. But other people are back there kind of flying around with gear, and they're fighting each other. And Lex Luthor is just kind of peering out from behind his little device that his little time machine that he made, right? And so now you see a handful of people flying up to him. One of them looks like the Joker, and a couple of them they have some flying gear. And anyway, it says, it's you, isn't it? You're Lex Luthor. How could you know my name? He says. It says, the tachyon particles gathered here for weeks, showing that someone was coming from the 21st century. Who else would dare? He says, what is this place? And they say, this is the city Lexor. This is our home. And he says, no, this is a dream. This has to be a dream. And he says, how did this happen? And this Joker person says, society stopped fooling itself. People were told to aspire to some fictional better version of who they are, but they couldn't ever hold on to it because it was all a lie. And they continue and they say it kept happening over and over for a millennia until an archaeologist found the lost works of Luthor and broadcast them to the world. Inspired by them, the people embraced what they really were on the inside. No matter how ugly it was, they stopped pretending to be superheroes, and then we conquered the universe in your name. And we call you the Great Tragedy. And he says, missed what? You missed, you must tell me. And they says, we call it Doom. And they show him this ring with the symbol. And it's the same symbol that we've been seeing throughout this entire book. And he says, Doom. And, you know, and they say, yeah, Mr. Luthor, is there something wrong? He says, Mr. Luthor. Right? And then he kind of, I guess he's kind of reminiscing back, and he's like thinking back of what's going on. He's trying to figure out what this Doom they're talking about. And now we flip back and we see that he is now with Grodd, and he's talking to Grodd, and he's kind of convinced Grodd about the same thing that he was convincing Sinestro. And, you know, Grodd say, I have the universe, I have this, and he's in the United Nations where they're assembling, right? And he says, I already have the world, Luthor. And you see that he's mind manipulating all these people, and he's using his Jedi mind tricks or whatever on these people, and they're attacking each other, and they're just ripping each other apart. And he says, you know, if you didn't have this mind dampening thing, I will tear you apart. You know, and he says, the leaders of your idiot species grovel at my feet at my command. I will not bow to any man. And he says, these witless bureaucrats, you know, at this pointless show of force designed to intimidate the Flash, but you know it all can accomplish nothing. He says, enough games. He says, I think I'll feed you to the military attache of Russian consulate. He appears to have strong jawbones. So he said he's gonna make this guy eat him or whatever. He says, listen to me, Grodd. I was wrong. We have all been wrong. He says, speak for yourself, human. And Grodd grabs him by the neck and starts to choke him. He says, I didn't finish my story, you arrogant primate. I know how to stop the Speed Force in its tracks. We don't have to wait until the end of time to win. The universe wants us to take it now. And Grodd kind of loosens up on his grip and he says, tell me now. Then we kind of go back to this that Legion's Club or whatever that club was in the beginning of the series, right? And it's kind of burnt up a little bit. And he says the villains of the future said Luthor missed something, which meant it must be right under his nose. Yet the only thing out of place was a forwarded invitation to his father's old Legionnaires Club. He saw the opportunity to let off some steam and some explosives because we saw him blow up that place, right? And he says he did not expect to find a door that none other could see, nor a secret chamber beneath the building decades older than the crumbling facade above. The papers described a strange, twisted history of the universe. It marked the coming of a great totality of power and the end of things anew, because he started to walk down this he goes into this door, he starts to walk down this basement, and he finds some papers, and it's talking about this totality and has these symbols all over this paper, right? And, you know, he's like, you know, the path towards doom, whatever, and he moves the papers, and there's this doorknob. He says, you know, we hadn't realized what when we carried the loose knob down with him. He said he hadn't realized when he carried the loose knob down with him that he had been holding an object more powerful than 100 atom bombs. So I guess he had this thing, right? He says with it he could unlock hidden energies of the universe. He would take the totality of the universal power and wield it. Doom would come in our time. Luthor would see to it. Now we're back with Sinestro and the Invisible Spectrum Corps, right? And there's tons of them. They're all hovering over the Hall of Justice. And Sinestro now has this cheesy smile and says, and bring justice to his knees. Let all who worship evil's might. And he starts going on and doing his little thing here, right? Now we see Grodd with this baby turtle, and Flash is in the background, and he's kind of subdued. Now now we kind of see that we got the Legion of Doom sitting around their little circle, and Luther's got this doorknob, and it's kind of in his hand, and there's power, and it's almost looks electrified, and we got Joker, Black Manta, Sinestro, Cheetah, and Grodd there. So they're all there, right? And let's read this. As a legion of horror had built itself in his mind as he reached for the doorknob on the table in that strange Kansas basement. Each participant best suited for one of the 7 forces described in these papers. A legion that represented the true face of the universe with all its selfish, vindictive pride. A legion that did not stand for the people as they should be, but as they were and would always be. And then we kind of get this flash forward, or this insight to the future, and it says, as he took the power in his hand, it echoed across all of time and space. It echoed all across the Lexor City and humanity's end. And all these people, they're all worshiping him, right? And they're all freaking out because they're like, hey, this is it. As the wall of light swallowed the future, erasing it, they all knew what this meant. Luther found the key to unlocking the truth in his own time. With rapturous cries, they cheered on their annihilation. So these people are just freaking out and going crazy because he found the key in his own time, not too late, right? So he found what he needed. And now we are back in the present time with Luther inside this little ship piloting Superman's body. And then this is the end of it here, right? And we see, let me read this to you, the guys here again. It says, Luther can almost hear them as he pilots Superman's body forward step by step. He understands his purpose now and yours. If he could, he would ask you the question he asks the rest. Why should you be better than your nature? Why should any of us? The universe made you as you are with all your selfish animal impulses. Why feel guilty for them? Celebrate them. All the polite rules of civilization and morality have done nothing but hold you back from your potential. He says, you know he's right. You feel it. Just like the rest of them, you want to do it. And then you see a panel here of Superman's eyes, and it's just completely glassed over, and he's completely taken over. It says you want to be who you really are, to embrace your true self just like Lex wants you to, and choose the right side. And it says, there's some expletives here. It says, I can only imagine that it says F justice, side with doom, right? And then that's the end. It says, next, Luther's big move. So this is where I was talking about. They gave us a little bit of answers of what's going on and where he got this doorknob and what this doorknob actually does and how what the power does. We still don't have the rules of what this doorknob can do and how it's going to be the key to unlocking this power, but we do have an idea and an insight of what that doorknob represents and what I guess it basically has potential of doing. But this is where I was saying, we kind of got some answers, but kind of didn't. And we still don't know what's going on with Superman and Martian Manhunter and where they're actually going. So hopefully we'll get those answers in the next one. I really want to know. This is already number 5. I think they've only got one more. I need the answers. They better give me all the answers. I don't know what's going on with this one. There's still questions unanswered. Hopefully we can get those answers pretty soon. So if I was going to give this a rating, I think I'll probably give it a little bit more than I actually thought when I first read it. I think when I first read it, I was probably going to give it a 5 just because I was like, not exactly what I wanted. But I think I kind of jumped up a couple of notches there. Now reading it 6-7 times possibly at this point, I think I'm going to give it a 7 at this point, just because, the art was great. I do like that we got some insight to the doorknob, and at least, and we got that really cool, that future little story there. So I kind of like that, and I think that's where my 2 points came from, was knowing about that little that alternate universe, or that alternate timeline, I guess you would say, or the future timeline. So I would give that a 7 out of 10. This is going to be my Justice League number 5 rating and my review. Stay tuned for the next book.
Can Mr. Wayne testify to corroborate your story?
Yeah. Can he?
Yeah. I mean, no. He's a busy guy, but I'm sure he can. Oh, hello, Mr. Wayne.
Oh, come on.
It's true. Batman was helping me move a couch. Batman is an upstanding citizen and honest guy.
Thank you, Bruce. Oh, man. What a handsome guy, right?
All right, are you guys ready for Batman number 52? This one was very interesting. I don't know if I want to say intriguing, but it was definitely very interesting, right? There was one panel where a guy who had his hand in his face and he was looking at Bruce Wayne very dreamy. Did you guys think that Bruce Wayne was dreamy? Let's find out. All right, this one is written by none other than King Tom King, right? And then we've got Lee Weeks as the artist, and we got I may need some help on this one, guys. Somebody please help me with the names. Elizabeth Brettweiser. I hope I did not butcher that as much as I do everybody else's name. Anyway, so we are still back in the courtroom, and I don't think we really get much let's jump right into this. So we kind of jump in here and we see that they're still deliberating, trying to figure out what's going on, but this time, Bruce is trying to convince everybody why Mr. Freeze there is innocent and Batman is wrong here, right? So, and there were some points in this one, guys. This one frustrated me so much because the dialogue, I can't. If some people out there are ranting and raving about how much they love this writing, and it's humanizing the characters, and they're just like, but I just can't get on board with this. I can't jump on board with this stuff, guys. I don't want to, I'm not a comic book writer, but I read them. I read them for fun, and I enjoy this stuff. This one frustrated me. And Batman is my all-time favorite DC character. I love Batman, but I can't say that I love these books. I just can't come out and say that I love these books. So let's see. They're in the courtroom, and someone says, as I see it, and I think we're pretty much agreed on this, there are 3 basic pieces of evidence. 1, the 3 deceased women in question all had a lower brain temperature. This was the cause of death. The police missed this. Batman caught it. But it was later independently confirmed by the police. So, people are wondering if the police are competent enough to even do their jobs now, right? And it says 2, the police and presumably Batman looked for Freeze after this discovery, and they found him with his suit on, his gun at the ready. His probation specifically said and stopped him and prohibited him from doing this. Something was going on, they say. And it says 3. And the most damning, Freeze confessed to the crime. The police after he was caught signed the confession. He said he was experimenting on the women because he wanted it was a plan to revive his wife. That's what Mr. Freeze does, right? He does experiments on things and people and tries to figure out a way to revive his wife, right? That's the whole reason why he became Mr. Freeze, right? So, I mean, at least if we're still in continuity, well, who knows at this point, right? So, and it says the facts, those are the facts, and as I see them, and I think they were fairly well established. I suppose there are arguments against that, but I don't think there are good ones anyways, you know? And it says, does anyone else have anything to add? Something did I miss? Is there supposed to be a discussion? And then this one lady jumps up, and this is where kind of this lady's dialogue kind of is wonky sometimes. She says, he's Mr. Freeze. He's being himself. These poor girls, he did that. Hold on. Let me read this again for you guys. He's Mr. Freeze. He's being himself. These poor girls, he did that thing with their brains. And he said that he did that thing. This is where it got frustrating for me very quickly. And this is what, like the second page here, and it was just so frustrating to me how this reads, and I couldn't get around it. This reminds me of the Booster Gold arc where I'm reading this, and the way it reads is just, I can't get it. And people are saying, oh man, he's speaking, the dialogue is just like we speak like that on a day-to-day basis. But come on, guys, really? This, even writing this, I can't even get myself around what she says. She says, these poor girls, he did that thing with their brains. And he said he did that thing. Oh my gosh, lady, you just told us that. He did that. I really? If anybody else out there, if you guys say that you guys understood it when you read this, hey, more power to you. Hey, you may be more intelligent than I am, but this one, I was confused. I think I read that one 2 or 3 times just to wrap my brain around what she was trying to say here and stuff. So, and then here comes that hilarious panel that I made fun of there in the beginning. It says, yeah, Mr. Wayne, and you got this guy, and he's looking off through the side of his glasses, and he's got his head tilted to the right, and he's got a balled up fist, and he puts it on his cheek, and he says, yeah, Mr. Wayne, considering some of us have actual jobs where we're not playboying around, some of us can't afford to lose money just sitting here. Those are the facts. It's what happened. Isn't that enough? But I don't even think I'm doing this justice. If she definitely want me to read this as we kind of see it, it would probably go a little something like this. Yeah, Mr. Wayne, considering some of us have actual jobs, I think she will want me to emphasize on some of this stuff where we're not playboying around. Some of us can't afford to lose money just sitting here. Those are the facts. It's what happened. Isn't that enough? And I still probably didn't do that justice because this guy literally looks like he's almost falling in love with them, or I don't know if that's supposed to be like him being frustrated with what he's saying, or if he's doing it on purpose and he's just kind of making fun of him, because then you get Bruce Wayne here in the next panel and he's giving him this like crazy mean mug, right? But then this entire time he's like, no, he said it's not enough. And then someone else says, I've got 3 kids, Mr. Wayne, and we're stuck in the hotel for how many days? And my sister's got to cover my kids and her kids. So, yeah, and more people chime in because they're all pretty upset. They're like, come on, man. He's a freaking criminal. Just convict him already, kind of a thing. And he says, 3 facts. I don't disagree with them, but maybe they need context. Why don't we go over these 3 facts each in turn and find the context? He says, take an hour or 2. That's it. At the end, if we're still where we are, I'll change my vote. And that lady that had that weird dialogue, she's like, fair? But I don't know if this is supposed to be like fair, like she's statement, because there's a question mark there. That's anyway. It says fair enough. Someone else says, she says, I think better than hanging the jury probably. Why don't we take a break for 5, go to the bathroom, and then we'll get started. So this is where we're at. Then we move on and we kind of see a little bit more in depth into what was going on between Mr. Freeze and Batman here. And it looks like Mr. Freeze is kind of getting away a little bit here, and he Batman's going after him. and we get more people here kind of jumping in and kind of talking to Bruce about this stuff. And it seems as if everybody else is against Bruce here, and they're all trying to convince him to change his vote, right? And not Bruce changing their when I read this, I felt like it should have been a little bit more deeper. At least Bruce Wayne should have at least, convinced me to that Mr. Freeze wasn't at fault here, that he was actually innocent here, and Batman actually kind of, went off the deep end. But I didn't get that feeling at the end of this. It felt like everybody else was more, had a better, they were better chance at convincing him or me into changing, the vote if I were Bruce Wayne, kind of a thing here. So we move on here a little bit, and we get a little bit of insight of what happened here with the during the autopsy, and we get more people talking to Bruce here and this and that, and then now Bruce is kind of jumping in here, and he's kind of walking back and forth. Everybody's at their tables. Hi, Bulbous. It's okay. Sorry, guys. I've got my son, and we're recording together here, and I don't think he likes this as well. He definitely likes my microphone. So if there's any noise, it's my son. Anyway, so he says, but maybe there's another way to see that this is not what I'm saying. It's right, just another way. These women, what if they died of the causes? They died of clots, and someone later, created the remnants of the decreased in temperature. So his thing is, somebody kind of swooped in before the police, and Batman could actually see, because he's like, he's all, well, the police didn't find it when they first found these women, and then all of a sudden when Batman comes in, out of nowhere, he finds the decrease in temperature in their brains and the brain activity and stuff. So I guess his idea is, somebody swooped in and made it look as if they had a decrease in temperature, and they knew somebody just knew that Batman would automatically, accuse Mr. Freeze, huh? That's kind of, I don't know if that seems far-fetched or if it seems very genius to me. And then we see this lady again, the lady of the crazy dialogue again. It says, if you're saying Batman purposefully, Batman has saved you, everyone here, I'm not going to, and okay, obviously I get that one. That one was a little confusing too, but I get that one because she's a little flustered. People talk like that when they're flustered. I understand that. So it says, please, I understand, I agree, but not Batman. Someone else, someone who came in after the cops, before Batman, someone who wanted, I don't know what they wanted was someone else, someone else to, and he says, then someone's like, what? Who? And he's like, I don't, it doesn't matter who, but it's an explanation. It explains why Batman saw what Gordon's people didn't. Your only explanation is Batman's better, but why? Why did Gordon miss it? Why did Batman catch it? And he's yelling at this point, and he slams his fist down on the desk there, and he says, why? And he says, were you convincing a man on, we're convicting a man on assumptions. If there are alternative assumptions that make just as much sense, I'm not saying it's the truth, but it seems like it could be the truth. If we follow the actual facts, take out Batman's, I don't know, the presumption of super competence, his infallibility, what is the actual simplest explanation that actually makes sense? The coroner was good, Gordon said. He should have seen it. So maybe the coroner missed it because it wasn't there, and maybe Batman saw it because it was. And if it wasn't, then Freeze didn't do it, and Batman went after the wrong man. And some other lady says, maybe this is a good time for another break. I think that's probably a good, time for another break, because he's getting pretty heated. Other people are getting pretty heated too. And someone says, Fred? He says, Bruce. He says, I used to live in Metropolis. He says, it's nice there. It's like... It is. It's not like here. Well, the weather's better, Bruce says. And we get this really cool page. If I would have stopped reading, I wouldn't have seen this really cool page. And this is probably one of my favorite pages in this entire book here, because we see Batman hitting, or we see Batman and Freeze. They're fighting, and Freeze hits Batman with his ray gun, or at least it looks like that. And it's like this kind of like black and white page, but it's kind of like a really bright, and it's really, really cool. I love this page. It's one of my favorite ones. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you not like this page? Daddy likes this page. He says, yeah, but it's more like everything's clean there. Man, I'm telling you, here it's dirty as anything. And he says, yeah. I mean, somebody coming in and messing with some girls. And Bruce says, I know, and then this guy interrupts and says, that's the Metropolis, it's what I'm saying, but maybe that's Gotham. And he says, yeah, Gotham, man, I'm telling you. So this guy's like, dude, this is Gotham, this happens a lot. It's not like Metropolis where everything is nice and clean, and this kind of stuff doesn't happen, right? So now they move on and say, well, that's a bunch of bullcrap, but he was up to something. If he was scared of Batman, he should have stayed in his house. And it says, because a guilty man runs, he should have just let Batman come to him, talk to him about the crime. And he's like, if he was innocent, yes, 100 times yes. And he says, have you ever seen anyone talk to Batman? Have you ever talked to Batman? And he's like, well, what does that have to do with anything? I'm not a criminal. I don't know Batman. Excuse me, guys. I'm gonna have to take a quick pause here and get my son off to the room. All right, sorry about that, guys. Where was I? Okay, this guy's like, he's saying I'm not a criminal. I don't know Batman. He's like, yeah, well, whatever Freeze is now, we all know he was a criminal, and he knows Batman. So Bruce Wayne's, his defense is, Freeze knew what Batman was going to do to him. He says for years and years, these two have been fighting, not talking, fighting. The prosecutor, not even the defense noted this. We saw pictures. Freeze had dozens and dozens and dozens of plans and plots on Gotham. He says, now Freeze gets information that Batman suspects him again. Freeze knows that Batman will come for him, and we ask him to do what? To expect him to do what? To wait and talk, to sit at home hoping Batman wants to have discussion. What evidence is there that Batman wants to have a friendly chat with him? What evidence is there he shouldn't have been prepared for another fight? So that's his defense. That's his thing. He was getting ready. It was against his probation or whatever to even suit up as Mr. Freeze, or even think about being Mr. Freeze or anything. But as soon as he heard that Batman suspects him of these killings, he puts on his suit and he's like, Batman's gonna come for me. He's not gonna talk. He's just gonna come and he's gonna start beating me. So this is what I got to do to defend myself. So he says, based on his past, we know he knew what to expect. And he prepared for that, how does that have anything to do with these three women being murdered? But maybe he's lying, maybe about the man, about being warned, so somebody's saying, and maybe he was lying about being warned, about Batman was coming. We don't know if he was lying, do we? So he's like, well, we do know that Batman was coming for him about the women. After the autopsy, after he found out the three women had been killed by cold. This is, again, that we see this over and over again. They explain to us as if we would forget what they're talking about. We know that. And he's like, whether or not Freeze was warned, Batman was coming. So if he is lying, it's a heck of a coincidence that he would be in his suit at that exact time. So this is his defense again. I keep saying that, but this is what he's trying to say, that why would he even be in his suit at that exact moment, you know. But these other people are saying, well, he's a criminal. That's what he was going to do. He was in a suit just because that's what he does. It's in his nature. He says, yeah, but yes, but he could have been lying. He could have been all dressed up to do whatever. But it seems equally possible that he could be telling the truth. And if it's equal, if it could go either way in our system, we need to go beyond a reasonable doubt. We need to convict him on putting that suit on. You know, not if we doubt that he's lying, not if we think maybe that makes sense. And we see another cool page here with Batman and Mr. Freeze here, and they shooting off his gun here and stuff, right? But this is, and then we see somebody else, talking here, and I don't know. It's so weird that how they do this. They're like, Mr. Wayne, I'm Tay, and he's all hello. And it's almost as if he has to have some kind of response to every single thing that they say. He says, my boy used to get into fights with the other boys, hard fights. He says, I'm sorry. And she says, if it's a woman, I don't know. Anyway, says, my boy is a good, I'm sure we'll find out once we flip on it. Anyway, excuse me. My boy is a good boy, and this boy wasn't. It happens when you're a parent. He says, it does. Well, one time this boy was coming over, and he was coming hard, and my boy, he knew he was coming. I see. He says, my boy, he got a gun legally, but he got one. I was mad, but he says, yeah. I took that gun away from him, made him go to the cops, and you know what the cops said? I swear to my face. He says, no. And the cops said, this is Gotham. Keep the gun. So, and he says, finally, the confession. And he says, so, okay, this is what they're still trying to say. This is Gotham, this is Gotham. Now we see this lady again with the crazy dialogue. And I think if I'm correct here, I think it even gets crazier here. So it says, I know what you're going to say, so you could be quiet for a second, Mr. Wayne. He was so shaken. He said he was so fragile. He was so scared because of what Batman did. Oh my. But you're forgetting he didn't confess to Batman, or we never heard that one. The police, never heard it. They heard his confession that he gave to them. He changed his story later, but for days, he's telling the police, Gordon's police, without any Batman anywhere threatening him, that he did it. He's the one, Mr. Dang Freeze. And he says, yeah. And then he goes on to say, why would someone keep confessing, even long after anyone was gone? Why, right? Why? And he says, ladies and gentlemen, when and then he says, when I was 10 years old, a man killed my mother and father. We were coming from the movies, and he went down the alley. He had a gun. Father yelled something at him, and he shot my father. Then he tried pulling the necklace from my mother and got tangled and shot her. I watched. He ran. I went down on my knees. And I screamed. He says, that moment, that fear, that scream, I was so scared, and he ran, and he was gone. And they took me away, and I got older, and I tried and tested, and I've been on the very he says, I've been on the very top. I've been very happy as a man it can be. I've had the greatest joys, the greatest friends. I've had victories, and I've had love. Uh-oh. Is he talking about, who is he talking about there, guys? He's had love, right? Anyway, he says, and then something happens. You lose something or someone, and there it is again. I'm there again. Mother's tangled. Father's yelling. I'm 10. I'm on my knees, and I'm scared out of my mind. And that feeling, I say, become something. I do things. I'm myself, but I'm not what I want to be or what I should be. So is this him telling us, he because he lost Catwoman there, and he lost his love, he wasn't who he was, who he should be. He said, I'm scared, and I'll do anything to get out of the fright. So is that what is he telling us right there? Is he kind of telling us as Batman without going into detail and telling anybody he's Batman? Is he telling us that he goes right back to it, and that's where he was? He did anything to get out of that fright. So he went looking for something. He went looking for Freeze because he automatically thought the temperature went down in their brains. It had to be Mr. Freeze, and he went blindly and he went after him. He said what Batman did here to Freeze, that violence, that cruelty, it didn't leave when he left. It stays there. I think even after Freeze, he said what he did. He wouldn't have said anything to get out of that fright. So I guess he's trying to put himself in there and say that, you know, put himself in that same situation. He says the confession after that beating, to me, to anyone who's known what I know, what probably we know, whoever Freeze said it to, that confession doesn't mean a thing. He says, I see what you say, Mr. Wayne. You know, did what you're doing. You did what you're doing, and you think it's real smart. The temperature is someone else's. Someone else did it. The costume makes sense. The confession's coerced, but it only works. All that nonsense you've got only works one way. Batman didn't try to find out why he found the temp problem and Gordon didn't. Batman never talks. He only beats people up. Batman went so far over the line torturing Freeze, it forced him to confess. All this doubt you say we should have that Mr. Freeze did it. It's all built on a solid belief, one you're demanding we have, without doubt. One that you haven't proved because everyone knows it isn't true. And this is the same lady, all right? And it seems like she kind of dominates the conversation with Bruce as well. It says, you're saying that Batman is wrong or bad, incompetent, horrible, out of control. You're saying Batman is not the hero we Gotham think he is? Now, if you want me to go along with you, you want to prove that, Mr. Wayne, you can prove that. And he says, yeah, I can prove that. And that's it. To be continued. And he's got this face. He looks like one panel he looked like he was kind of upset that this lady was even kind of, coming at him. And then at the end he's like, yeah, I can prove that. And this this face is like, I got this. So what's going to go on? What's happening next? I want to know more. But that's where I was saying it was interesting, guys, here. But it was, I don't know if it was intriguing, and I don't think it intrigued me enough to be like, I'm ready for another court deliberation or a jury deliberation. This is already the second or third part of this. Come on, let's move on from this, guys. I want to know what's going on. Obviously in this book it feels like Bruce Wayne has come to terms with or at least knows where he is and how he's feeling after the breakup with Catwoman. So let's see what's going to happen next. Let's see how he's going to convince everybody and how he can prove that Batman was actually being very cruel. So it makes me wonder if he's gonna, put on a mask and be like, Bruce Wayne, I did it. I went too far, and then take off the mask and be like, see guys, Batman said it. He came in here and he said it. That's kind of why I threw in that little excerpt from in the beginning of this little book here and this review here, because it reminded me that of Bruce Wayne in court, Batman in court, and he takes off his mask and Bruce Wayne comes out. That's how he corroborates his story. So is that what we're gonna get here? Is gonna put the mask on and come in and corroborate his story, and that's what we're gonna see? That would be hilarious. But we'll see what happens. I don't know what's gonna happen. If I was going to give this a rating, I think I would give this one a 6. Just because some of the and maybe I didn't do it justice. Maybe I read it wrong. Maybe I made it even horrible. Sorry, guys, but the dialogue wasn't there for me. The art was kind of cool this time. I really liked the art a whole lot this time. So I might, if I was just judging on art alone, I might even jump it up to a 7, but I'm going to give it a 6. That's going to be my review for Batman number 52. We've got Nightwing number 47 coming up next. Are you ready for Nightwing number 47? This one was actually kind of a weird one, guys. Just saying. So this is the finale of the Bleeding Edge arc, right? And this one was just, I don't know if this tied everything up like everybody wanted to or what, but I wasn't really following this one that much. I did read the first issue of this arc, and it was a little odd. Just letting you guys know, it's a little weird, but you know it is what it is. This one is also it's all the same people, and it's Benjamin Percy as the writer, Chris Mooneyham as the artist, Klaus Janson on inks, and Nick Filardi on colors. You know, all the colors were great, and the artwork did look pretty good. I did like the artwork, all that stuff. But it was just the dialogue was a little weird. I mean, I don't know about it weird, but I think this whole story was just very odd to me. I'm not too much into the Nightwing who doesn't like technology, the Nightwing who wants to punch technology in the face, right? And this is what we get here. And we even get one of these things here. It says, I said to myself, I wish I could punch technology in its stupid face. He says it again. And we saw that in the same, in the first issue of this arc. He said that. It was just so weird and very odd to me. I didn't get it. Sorry about that, guys. My son in the background there, he's crying and he's throwing a fit. I should probably go check. Let me pause for a second and I'll go check on him with my wife. All right, sorry about that, guys. The fuzzy baby, he was eating and mom took it away from him just because he fell asleep, and he wasn't quite happy about that. So anyway, you know, babies are babies, right? Anyway, so you know, this is a little weird. We got Bloodhaven 2.0, and we've got tons of people, you know, they're protesting, and they don't want this guy, Willem Cloak, to take over, and he's definitely taken over everything here. Everybody's wearing those little transponders, or whatever you want to call them here, those little controllers and things like that. So that they can, you know, like everything can be flipped and changed into this virtual reality world. Hence the whole Bloodhaven 2.0, right? So anyway, this is what we see here. Everybody's kind of just throwing their phones down, and he's like, you know, you all want this. You don't want this change, but I see that you guys are all wearing my transponders, my controllers. So that means I can. And you guys are susceptible to everything that I can do, that I want, right? So he makes everybody look. One of these ladies here, he makes them think that that they don't have a mouth, and they can feel they're like having these hallucinations. And one of them's got a bat coming out of their mouth, and one of them's got some weird face in their stomach, and another guy looks like he's another person looks like, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. It looks like a man. But and a couple other panels there, it looks like a woman. I don't know, weird. But their blood is dripping from their face, and it's just so weird. You got, you know, Barbara Gordon here, and she's not in her Batgirl costume here, and she's like, you know, she's like, hey Nightwing, you sure what's going on up there? Things are really freaking weird down here. And he says, yeah, I might have you beat, because obviously he's fighting these weird mechanical looking things. They call themselves the Terminals, I guess. And he's fighting these things, and they're kind of, you know, they're stretching out their arms and they're wrapping them up. They almost look they got tentacles and stuff, and they're this blank, you know, this blank, I guess AI you would call it, because once people turn on their controllers and anything, and they can turn into anybody that they like, right? So this is kind of what he says. He's still got this virtual, this virtual goggles on kind of thing, and so there's a moment where, and I thought this was really weird in this moment. You've got Batgirl, and she's yelling to the Russian Sisterhood, which is all these ladies and stuff, right? And she's like, yo, Russian Sisterhood, and she's pulling off her jacket, opening up her jacket, and she's got the Batgirl costume under, but she doesn't have her mask on. So obviously these people are definitely seeing that she is Batgirl. Weird, right? I don't know if anybody notices, but I thought that was really weird that she's giving away her identity here. It almost feels like it says, you ever click on the wrong attachment and a bunch of blinking pop-ups invade your screen? You're wasting your time if you try to close the windows. You got to force the quit. You know what I mean? You got to turn it right off at that. You got to turn it off at the source, I guess she's trying to say. So I guess what she's saying is you got to unplug it in order for it to work, in order for it to stop, so that all these pop-ups don't continue to pop up. So what is she trying to say to these ladies, to these women here? And I thought it was very weird. And then I go to the next one, and she's like, you gotta knock yourself out. She punches a couple of people, and this is what's going on. And one of the ladies here gets a gun and shoots off the transponder, but it's attached to her arm, so she shoots off her hand. And this is what you see here. And she's got a bloody nub now, and I guess she believes I guess she thought that was gonna help. If she gets rid of the transponder, then of course, obviously, that would mean that that she's no longer gonna hallucinate, right? So I thought that was very. I don't know if that would have been a smart choice to do, So she points the gun at Willem Cloak here, and then here comes Nightwing. He's jumping in, and he's like, Batgirl, tell me you're not a hologram. She says, no, I'm not a hologram. He's like, there's no time. I don't have any time to ask you your security questions. I'm just gonna believe it's you. I'm gonna trust that it's you. And so it was. This is so silly to me here. And he's the problem is I hate technology. The big question is, where is he? Where's Cloak? Because Cloak, dips out and he starts running away. But we find out here that Cloak is not the one who is behind all this. Yeah, it's some weird creature-looking thing. Forgive me if I don't know the name, but anyway, he almost looks like that, like the terminals, but this time he's glowing almost yellow, the same color that would pop up on people's phones when they would start to light up and they were about to blow someone up. So that's what's going on here, and this thing is like, the perfect target. He says Nightwing's here. And then this glowing terminal, I'm gonna call it. It says, that's the perfect target. You should be running toward him, not away. And then you see a really cool page. If there's not any cool pages in this entire book, I think this would probably be the one really cool page, because you see the Justice League, and then you see Batman and Robin, and then you see the Titans, and then Teen Titans, I guess, or the different, Teen Titans, and then the Titans, I guess you would say, but they don't really look like they're Teen Titans. I thought that was weird, but anyway, you see that, and he says, we came to Bloodhaven as a beta experiment for a larger harvest. Information is there, a richer crop than Nightwing. And he's talking about in Gotham, you know what I mean? I guess I'm not sure what he's trying to get at here. Is there anyone more versatile, adaptable, connections? Anyone who would potentially know more? He is the center of a web of heroes. Heroes we will soon engage in our own dark web. So this thing's got a bigger agenda to go after all of the heroes that Nightwing is connected to. They want to take them over and create them for this dark web or whatever they're talking about here. So Nightwing and Batgirl here are fighting, and she sets off this grenade, this electromagnetic pulse grenade, and she has to explain to us what it is, right? She says everything within a 50-yard radius, everything's done, it's dark, it's over, and he says, good, now we can find Cloak. So that took out everybody's transponders things, or whatever you want to call them, controllers they call them, and they start going after Willem Cloak here. And they chase him to, I guess, to a train station. He falls off. Nightwing takes him up, and then we kind of see this little backstory on how Willem Cloak became this cybernetic type with all these cybernetic, arms and eyes and things like that. And he says, I guess when he was younger, these kids were teasing him, and then they kind of pushed him off the ledge, and a train came and got him, and I guess that's how he lost his arm and an eye. That's a very odd thing, for him to get run over by a train, and that's all he loses. He didn't, he lost an eye and he lost an arm or whatever. Very weird. But anyway, so now he kind of talks about about what's going on here, right? He says, about, this worm thing or worm. I don't know what they call it, but anyway, he says, about targeted advertising. Worm knew that what I wanted before I did revenge on those boys and the city itself. He used my vulnerabilities to weaponize me. He's going to do the same to everyone he can, even you. He says he'll hack your mind. He'll use your fears, your desires, your hates, your secrets to hurt you and hurt others. Nightwing asks, who is he? I know you're addicted to that thing, but maybe now's not the time because you got Batgirl. She's looking at her phone. And she says, but my phone's not even on. And her phone starts to light up, and you got this kind of electrical kind of hiss, and she throws her phone. He says, don't answer that. It's them. It's him. It's them. She drops her phone to the floor, and these weird tentacle things come out of the phone, and it grabs Willem Cloak and pulls him into the phone. I thought that was this was very odd. This was really weird. And so now Cloak is gone. It says the first wave was Bloodhaven. The second wave is going to be Gotham. And it says next deadline. And this is it. That's the last page here. Very weird, very odd turn of events. We're not going to see the last of this guy. They call him Worm, I guess. No, Worm. I don't know. I'm going to call him Worm. Weird. He's that weird, terminal looking guy. Anyway, so this is what's happening here. Artwork was actually pretty good. I liked the artwork. I liked the colors. It was really cool. This story, all in all, was just a very odd story, and I don't know if I could get into it completely and fully. It wasn't my story. It wasn't my favorite, So, but this is what it is. And I wonder, just this last panel, these last few panels here, I think that's where it got me interested and intrigued into what's going to happen, in the next arc here, and what they're gonna do in Gotham now when they're gonna go after all these different superheroes. I want to know. I want to see more. I want to know more. But I mean, if I was going to look at it and say, "Oh, this probably wouldn't be my best, my pick of the week." So I don't know. This one is what it is. If I was going to give it a rating, I'd probably give this one a 6. Because I kind of want a little bit. I want to know why Nightwing doesn't like technology and why he wants to punch it in his stupid face. I don't understand. Very weird. Especially when he trained with the guy who's got all kinds of different gadgets, and he's got this big huge supercomputer in the cave, and if Batman is the biggest detective, and at one point, Nightwing's called himself a better detective, I guess. Maybe he hasn't, but if he sees himself as just as good as Batman, just forensic type of stuff, you got to rely on computers and technology and things like that to, move you forward in an investigation. So I don't understand why Nightwing would not like technology, because technology can help you in so many different ways. He prefers the old school sleuthing, I guess, but it was very weird to me. Anyway, that's going to be my review for Nightwing number 47, and that's going to be the end of the books for this week. And like I said in the beginning of this, we're going to do a 2-week show. I'm going to jump into the next week's books here, guys, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this next run of books. That's going to be my books for August 1st. We're going to go into August 8th and see what's up with those books. Hopefully, guys, you guys can enjoy those ones, and we'll see you guys back here in a little bit. Alright guys, how's it going? This is Joey here, and we're going to be talking about August 8th books. This week, we're going to be talking about Catwoman number 2, Hawkman number 3, Detective Comics 986, and I think we're going to talk about Superman number 2. All of these were really good. I liked some of them more than I liked the others, but these were actually, this week, they were actually not that bad. Actually, Detective Comics was actually probably one of my favorites this week. It was really good. And unfortunately, Superman might be one of my least favorites, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But we're going to be having a little fun here for you guys, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this, and we'll get right into these books here in just a second.
We've made some mistakes. Who's Kyle?
Girls gotta eat.
And you have an appetite. Why would you run? You can't hide from us with a record like this.
Maybe it's not you I'm running from.
All right, guys. First off, we're going to be talking about Catwoman number 2, and this was the Copycats Part 2, and this one is Joelle Jones, Laura Allred with the colors, and Joelle Jones doing the artwork on this one too, which is pretty cool. And let me say this a little bit about this book. This one, it was for being the second one, it was not too bad. I may not have such a high rating as I did with the last one, or maybe I may be somewhere a little close to what I did last time. But and this one was very weird too, a little bit, just in some areas where we'll get into that here in a second. But it was just in some areas there was just a little odd parts, and it was just a little inconsistent for me. The artwork is always awesome, but and I love the colors, and I love the way they portray some of these copycats. But it was very weird in how let's get into it actually, so we can talk about how weird it is. So we open up the book here, and we see, obviously we left off Catwoman going into that room where she found herself in a room full of women who were dressed up like Catwoman, right? And a couple of them, one of them had a bat with nails in it, and she was gonna start, going after Catwoman, and all these other ones are around, and they're just got, so some of them start attacking her, which was a little weird, and so she, goes after him too. She says, if I can make this last, I'm sure sleep will come. Because obviously she wants to get some sleep. She hasn't been sleeping. She hasn't been able to get her rest, right? So this is what she's doing. She thinks that she's gonna fight these copycats, and she's gonna tire herself out, and she'll get some sleep at least. She says the bed won't feel so empty, blah blah blah. She talks, and this dialogue is all right, but it's not. It doesn't. I mean, the fight is more intriguing to me. So, and here comes this lady with the bat with nails, and she's coming after her now, and and then they're fighting, right? She takes them out. She takes a handful of them out, and she just keeps going back and forth. She gets socked up in the nose, and but anyway, she goes through all of these women, tons of them, and at one point she keeps one of them, I guess, alive or awake enough to find out what's going on and where she's going. She's like, just a couple questions, and I'll let you be on your way. What's the deal with stealing my look? And the lady that she kept awake or alive or not knocked out, she says, we were hired for an audition. She says an audition. So number one here, if they were hired for an audition, and she says, hold on, and she says, yeah, I'm really an actress, stage mostly, and we kind of thought, that we were like hired for like some kind of flash mob kind of thing. So now if these women were supposed to be hired for a flash mob, and this Catwoman comes in through the door, and it's the real Catwoman, but they don't know, right? But obviously they're in a room full of tons of women who look the same with this Catwoman look, and if they were like, they thought they were, at least this woman thought she was hired for like a flash mob, wouldn't she think that, oh, hey, look, we got another member of our flash mob. We got tons of people here, why would they even have a bat with nails? Why would they, want to fight her and start to attack her or what? So this makes me wonder now if they hired some of these... Oh, okay, sorry, I got my son on my lap and he's drooling all over my wires. So anyway... I was wondering, I had an idea. Now, did they throw some actresses in there along with some assassins or some hired guns or some mercenaries for hire who were, or some, maybe not mercenaries, but people who were hired to beat her up, kind of a thing? Did they trickle some of them in there with some of these actresses because they just wanted to throw her off a little bit? Hey. You need to stop eating my wires and drooling so much, coughing. Okay, so so that's one thing that I was wondering there. I was listening to the guys over at the Weird Science DC podcast, and they were talking about how they thought, if they had this question arise, well, if they were hired for a flash mob, why were they attacking her, and why did some of them have weapons? And I started thinking about that, and I was like, well, what if they did hire some of them as actresses, but they threw a little bit of these thugs in there to attack her and to make it seem like they were all there for the same reason. Now we flip the page and we're back with this one woman that Catwoman was fighting before, right? And she took her mask off and she's talking to the governor's wife or the mayor's wife or whatever. The lady with the crazy nose, right? The one without any nose, the one with the fake faces, the fake face and the crazy all those prosthetic pieces to her face, right? And she says, like I said, I messed up. She said, you certainly did. 2 cops, both on my payroll, were shot. And you know how much loyalty cost after many years. She says, I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. And, she says, Dr. Finnick, do you have anything to prescribe for a very sorry day laborer? And she's got a doctor there, and he's got this, it's a sinister looking doctor, and he's got those, that he's got all his tools laid out, and he's got a vial there and a syringe and tools, right? And he says, yes, I might have just the thing. And she says, Raymond, would you and your brother help Dr. Finnick? And they grab this woman, and you think that he's going to go for the syringe and all these other tools. He grabs a hammer. This doctor grabs a hammer, and they grab her hand, and they bust her hand, break her hand here. And then he gives her, something for the pain or whatever. So now we are back in with Catwoman. And there's a knock on the door, and she's in some, and I this is the first time that I actually noticed where she's at. She's in some like weird storage unit, and she's like sleeping on like a, I don't know. I would only think that this was probably like the loading dock or something, or very weird. I don't know, but here comes that guy, Carlos. He comes up, and she's laying on her bed, and she can't sleep still, right? So he comes in with a big box, and he said, did I wake you? And she said, I wish that were possible. What did you manage to find? And he said, well, after you told me you were looking for some cool gadgets, I had a look around the shop, and I made a few calls, and this is what I came up with. And then, so I guess she's looking for some gadgets and stuff so that she can, be Catwoman. And he says, first I've got this ever essential wireless earpiece and not so essential but equally cool taser ring. She says, no thanks. Okay, how about this lipstick pistol? And she says, watch where you're pointing that thing. And then he's got a batarang in his hand, and he's all, this is my favorite, a bat. And she's got one, got a couple of those, no big deal. And he says, okay, I've got some pellets, this and that. And she says, hey, this looks handy. And he says, that's a rectal toolkit for, and she's like, ew, gross, here you go. You go ahead, you take that back. And this one was really weird. Why was that in there? If he was looking around and he grabbed some gadgets, why would he put that in there? I don't understand that. If it was supposed to be him joking with her, because it looks like a lipstick pistol. It looks like the same lipstick pistol that he, pulled out for her. And, I was wondering, I was like, is that the same exact thing? Didn't he just show that to her? So weird to me. But anyway, what was very odd about that part is if it was supposed to be a joke, that fell flat. That was just a very odd panel to me. Why did he even grab that and put that in his little if all these things that he was bringing to her, why would he bring that to her? Just and he doesn't, and it doesn't even look like he was joking with her, because he's like got this face where he's like, ew, I don't even want to touch it, why are you touching it, kind of a face. So if it were a joke, if it were me and I was bringing this to her, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna see if she's gonna pick this up and think that it's lipstick or something, or think that it's I just want to mess with her a little bit, see get a rise out of her, and I would be like, how about this, but he didn't do that. So, and he's all right, I'll take this and I'll do what you whatever. He's like, that's not cheap. She wants it. She takes the lipstick pistol, I guess. And he says, she says, okay, there's a lot of collector's stuff for this. He said a diamond ring might cover it. And she says, that one's not for sale. But how about the 3-point diamond solitaire or whatever? So she gives him another one, another ring box. And anyway, that made me wonder. I was like, well, what ring did she give him? Did she give him the engagement ring that Bruce gave her? Or what? How many rings does she have laying around? I mean, obviously she's a thief and she's a jewel thief, so that's what she does, right? I'm sure she really would have tons of rings laying around. But which one of these rings did she just give him? My mind would say the one that she said that one's not for sale. She's keeping it for keepsake, I guess, or I don't know why she would be holding on to that. If she stood up Bruce or whatever. Anyway, and then you see her put the ring down on the bed, and she opens it up, and she's like laying on her belly and doing the girl thing, kicking up their legs behind them, and she's just staring at the ring, and then she closes it. Now we see the governor or the mayor or whatever this guy is. I really didn't really care to know what he's doing. Anyway, he says, good afternoon. As many as you no, 2 dedicated police officers were killed in the line of duty last evening. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families, and our commitment to law and order in the state of California continues. Now, we find out that she's in California, but hey, in the first issue, wasn't one of these guys, or a handful of these people, weren't they speaking like some kind of, I don't want to say Spanish, but it seemed like it was like some kind of Latin descent. If it was Spanish, I can understand why they would, but it made me feel like they were like she was out of the country. I don't know if anybody picked up on that last issue, but I was like, oh, okay, she's in some like Latin country, and that's, you know, and I think I even noticed that some of the areas had some kind of Latin Spanish on the storefronts and things of that nature. But you know, I mean, okay, it's California. If she's like in LA or something like that, I can understand that, because I mean, I live in Arizona, and we've got tons of places here in Arizona that have, you know, Spanish on their storefronts and things of that nature, and a lot of people do speak Spanish around here. But I thought that was just an odd thing to put in their last issue. Were they doing that on purpose to kind of throw us off to make us think that she was in a different country? Very weird. And so anyway, he says, now, however, it is with a heavy heart that I am announcing my resignation as governor. See, here we go. He's the governor, and this is the thing. I didn't really care to read and to if I was going to read this and I was supposed to, you know, remember this, none of this stuff kind of stuck with me, because the first issue, I didn't think, you know, he wasn't as important. His wife was more important. She was the one that was, you know, sending these thugs around, and she was, I was even confused last issue. Was he the governor or was she the governor? Because the entourage was all around her and not him, and he was kind of left behind. So that's why I was like, this is it kind of threw me off here. And I think that's why I didn't really remember if he was the governor or the mayor there, because his wife felt more important than he did. So anyway, he's resigning. He says, last month I was diagnosed with stage 2 prostate cancer. I wonder if he needed that, you know, that device that Carlos brought to Selena. I wonder if that was his. Anyway, and while prognosis is optimistic, after consulting with my doctors, I feel it is in the best interest of the residents and taxpayers of the state to step down, effective as of 5 o'clock this evening. And, you know, the governor's wife kind of looks like, and you're like, what the heck's going on? Her sons are even like, hey, Mom, did you know? And she's like, no, I didn't. He says, are you all right? And she's, well, just we'll have to move up all the times tables, all the plans and stuff like that. So she had some kind of sinister plans, and his stature was part of that plan, I guess. Now we're downtown in Villa Hermosa, and this is those things that made me wonder. They had to have been in a different country or something. But now we see this guy, and it's the same guy who I guess it was his partner who died or something like that. And he's in a bar or something. And he says, you know, you following me? He says, you won't text me back. You ever think I was avoiding you? He says, come on, Sam. I just want to know if you have any leads on where she is. You think if I knew where she was, I'd be sitting here with you? He says, stop messing with me. Everyone on the squad knows you're on the take. He says, on the take? He says, it's fine. Half the guys in the city are. I'm not here to make you make trouble for you. He says, I just want you to know what's happening with the investigation. This is going to get cleaned up. He says, or I could tell the wife of that murdered cop that we are doing everything we can. And has a mad face. He's like, I gotta go. Puts money down, and this kid follows him out of the bar, and he says, Sam, I'm not asking you to be an honest guy. I'm just asking you to be honest with me. This isn't your case. Stay out of it, he says to this kid. He says, you just need to worry about yourself right now. The sooner you realize the city doesn't give a crap about you or anybody in it, the easier your life will get. Now go home. Now we see Selena Kyle, and she's dressed in this black dress, and she's giving her keys to this fancy car. And this is another thing. If she's driving this super fancy car, where did she get it? Did she steal it? Did she have it? I thought she was broke. Or was she using all that money when she was gambling? Did she hide it all away, or what was going on to buy this crazy looking car? And it's a pretty expensive looking car. Anyway, now she gives it to the valet, and she says, "Keep it close." And she walks into this ballroom. They're serving champagne. There's people dressed up, and she walks up, and there's the two brothers of the governor's wife, and they say, "Good evening, Miss Kyle. I'm Raymond Creel. We've been expecting you." So these are the people who obviously had sent all those different copycats out to kill her, and now they're here and they're saying that they've been expecting her. They look like they're pretty sinister here, and I want to know what's going to happen here. I want to know, what are they going to do, and what is she doing there, and how did she get into there, and what does she have planned? And this is the last page, and it does say "to be continued." We will see what happens next in number 3. I do want to say this is probably one of my favorite panels here, just because of the background. If I took out the characters, if I took out Celine Kyle and the Creel brothers, this color, this artwork, it's awesome. I love it. Even the characters, even Celine Kyle and these guys, they're really cool. They're cool looking, and I really like this artwork. I think Joelle Jones is an amazing artist. Sometimes some of the dialogue is a little weird to me, just because I'm critiquing it. But if I were to, I'm still not convinced if I was going to read this book, if this was going to be an ongoing book for me yet. So far, I haven't seen anything that would keep me interested. Hopefully, number 3 will do that, and hopefully, we will jump on board with this one here soon. If I was going to give it a rating, I think I would give it a 6. I think that's fair. 6 is fair, and it's probably mostly artwork. So 6 out of 10 for me on Catwoman number 2. Next, we'll have Hawkman number 3.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman, winged wonder, who would scale his faithful fighting mascot, hit his arsenal of phenomenal powers against both earthly and interplanetary foes at peace. Hawkman, the winged avenger.
All right, we're back with Hawkman number 3. It says The Awakening Part 3, The Rite of Passage. We've got Robert Venditti as the writer on this one, Brian Hitch as the penciler, and we've got a couple inkers on this one. We got Harry Curie, Paul Neary, and Hitch, and we got Alex Sinclair, Jeremiah Skipper as the colorists. And this one with all these artists and colorists and pencilers, it's actually very very cool artwork. I really like the artwork a lot on this one. They did a very good job. And I really don't always talk about the covers, but the covers on this one, they were pretty cool, guys. Just saying. There was a couple of covers that were awesome here, right? And so this one, we are following, Carter Hall, Hawkman, and he's back from fighting himself, and he got that scepter, right? And this one is there's not a lot of word bubbles, but there is a lot of narration boxes. So there's a lot of it. I'm not really gonna read them, but I will just tell you about the story a little bit. So we see Hawkman, and he's fighting T-Rex here, and he kind of has some really cool banter, and he goes back and forth, and there is one point where he says, your ancestors are going to turn into birds and this and that and stuff. So, and then he fights him, and he kind of it goes back and forth. He kind of tries to get away from him, and he clocks him a couple different times, and he I don't know what he does here, but he clocks him and he gets away from him, and T-Rex just kind of loses interest, and he's like, all right, well, that was a good warm up, I guess, or something. So anyway, he takes his takes a camp, sets up his camp right here at the base of a mountain here, and he says here, I will read this a little bit. He says, for the night, at least the territory at the foot of the mountain belongs to me. I'm exhausted, not just from today's fight, from the nonstop race that has kept me barreling forward. Exploration, and discovery again. And I guess he's just sitting down and he's writing in his journal there. And he's just jotting stuff down. And he says, my only clue is carved into the handle of the hawk-headed scepter, a clue left by me when I was an ancient Egyptian prince named Khufu. So he's talking about that same iteration of himself when he went back and fought him last issue. This says, this mystery of my lifetimes, only I can solve it. The next clue must be at the mountaintop, like the natural chart, a clue left by me in a place only I would know to look. And he's cooking up, I don't know, this almost looks like a pig, but then when he's chewing on something, he looks like he's eating a turkey leg, or I don't know what it is, but he's eating some kind of dinosaur type meat or whatever. It's actually kind of making me hungry right now, guys, just saying. So it says, did my past selves know I was starting to forget, that I was losing my history and the purpose of what I was meant to serve? And he says, my lives have spanned time itself. Now time is against me. Will I survive what awaits me in the morning at the top of the mountain? He says, I wish I weren't alone. And you see him, and this was really cool here. This artwork was really awesome here to me, because you see him flying, and he's got his wings all spread out, and he's flying up to the top of this mountain that kind of you can't really see because it dips into above the clouds there. You see him, he's soaring there, and he sees you see all kinds of bird-like birds coming towards him, and they almost look like they're too big to be birds. He says those are larger than petrosaurs I've seen, and they're flying too fast to be. And then by the time he even can say this to himself out loud, they're right on top of him. And this is so funny, because they're bird-like humanoids, and he calls them featherins. And they say featherins, defend the airy. And I don't know if you want to call them featherins or featherins, featherins, whatever you want to call them. Featherins, whatever they are. They are going to defend the airy. And they look very similar to him. This is the one thing that I did notice when I was reading this. I was like, they look very similar to him. Why wouldn't they say, yo, hey, this is, you look just like us. Why are we even defending this against you? Anyway, sorry, guys, that's my son. He's sucking his thumb and he's going to sleep, my little guy. Go meet me, Papa. Okay, so he's sleeping while daddy podcasts. Anyway, so they're defending the top of this mountain. What's at the top of the mountain, and so he gets his mace out and he starts fighting them, and he's tearing into them, knocking them out a couple different times, and then here we have some really cool panels here, and it shows him fighting, and these guys are just doing some crazy aerial acrobatics and stuff like that, and they are taking it looks like they're taking advantage of him and kind of overpowering him here a little bit. And and he drops his mace, and he's like, oh, now I am mad. He says, I'll take all of you. I don't even need my... And then you see the next panel, and his mace is glowing. He says, my mace? With a question mark. And his mace comes right back towards him and right into his hand. And he says, it flew back to me. He says, I'll be honest, that discovery isn't good for you. So he didn't even know that his mace would fly back to him. This is very Thor-esque type of stuff, right? This is like, Thor's like Mjolnir, right? How it flies right back to him. So now that he found this out, he starts using it and starts throwing it around and throwing it at these guys, and it just keeps coming back at him. And he's taking these things out by throwing his mace around now. And it says this clash spanned hours. So it took him hours and hours to fight these Feitherins, right? I'm gonna say it different times each time just so I get everybody's iteration of this word correct. Feitherins, Featherins, and Feitherins. So anyway, so he finally subdues them, or gets past them at least, and he reaches the top of the mountain here. But when he gets to the top of the mountain, there's still somebody there. There's somebody sitting there, and he says, "I've reached the mountaintop." He says, "You look wise, old one. Don't make the same mistake the young ones made." And this old man is sitting on a rock, and he's got a staff in his hand. And he says, "Fight, there will be no more of that. You are the one that I've waited for since I was a fledgling. Flegly. See, I am horrible with words, guys. I was not in the spelling bee when I was younger. Just saying, because this is exactly why. Because I can't pronounce anything. So anyway, he says, my only dream was to see the Hawkman." So hold on. Let's back up here. If this old man knew that he was the Hawkman, why didn't the young ones know that he was the Hawkman? Why were they fighting him? Why were they, if they lived their lives and they grew up hearing about this Hawkman? I mean, come on. This old man is not the only one who heard about the Hawkman. So why did they sit there and say, "Whoa, why? I think this guy's the Hawkman. Why are we fighting him? This is who we've been waiting for. This is what our culture is about, right? So why are we fighting him? Why did they fight him?" So he says, but it is too late for that. Age long ago stole my sight. So this old man is blind too. He says, "Then how do you know I'm him?" He says, "Who else but the incarnation of the one true Hawkman could survive the Feithered warrior flock? Many have tried, all have died. Do you carry the hawk-headed staff? You will need it for what comes next." So this old man, obviously this sounds like they like prophesied that this would happen, that he would fight the warrior flock, and that he would have this staff in his hand. So why would they even fight this? Why would they even fight? That's, I don't know, weird. But if that's the only weird thing to me, whatever, not a big deal. He says, "Sent here by who?" He says, "Yes, the old story said you might not remember that each time you are reborn, you remember less. Who can say how many births and deaths it has been for you? Time is different for us in this strange place." So they're not even of this realm. I guess they're just guarding what's inside this cave behind this old man. He says, "We were sent here by you, but not you, because you are you. I know that you understand." Okay, is Tom King on this book? Guys, just saying. Let's read that again. "We were sent by you, but you..." Hold on. Let me back up because I messed that up. I made that even worse. But let's hold on. "We were sent here by you, but not you, because you are you. You understand that." Did you guys get that? Somebody took that out of Tom King's book there. Just saying. And he says, "Now the moment has come. Enter the Eyrie and see that which you have come for. Your journey must continue." And he says, "But my journey is over. My flock awaits for me in the cloud land of the spirits. Serving the line of the Hawkman has been the honor of my life." And he says, "Don't go. I have more questions." So if this is what they do, they serve the Hawkman. Again, why? Why didn't they not say, "Oh, whoa, this is the Hawkman. Let's let him go past." You know what I mean? So anyway, so the old man kind of disappears into smoke into the cloudland. And Hawkman sees this opening in this cave, and he enters in. And he says, I didn't fly all this way just to fight and talk. And he says, these walls, smooth and curved with precision, this couldn't have been done by any ancient culture I've studied. Because it looks like it's almost metal, and there's some kind of altar, and it's very weird. He says, this isn't Earthstone. These glyphs, what are they? Kind of. He's like, what are these glyphs? Well, hold on, guys. Like he looks at this, he's like, these glyphs. It's the Hawkman symbol on his chest, and then on the opposite side there's a bird, and there's an opening in the middle, like a keyhole. And then he rubs his Hawkman symbol on his chest, and he's got this staff. He says, you will need it for what comes next. And then he breaks it. He breaks it. And then he takes it off. He says, if this triggers some kind of death trap, I'm going to be annoyed. And he gets it, and then he puts the hawk head into the keyhole, and it lights up, and the top of the roof lights up. And it's a planetarium. It shows different constellations and shapes and things like that. He says it's a planetarium, but the night sky isn't Earth's. The constellations, ancient alien mythology, the 7 brothers and 7 sisters. So, anyway, and then he says, and the first great hero, Calmoran, I remember. He starts to remember now. He says, and he grabs his head, and he starts making noises like, oh, like almost like he's got a headache. He says, not again. And he's like jumping. He's jumping either into the future or into the past here. He says, and then there all of a sudden there's a gun in his face. He says, hands where I could see them meet. And he says, and this person with the gun, turn and you see him, and he says, I'm Wingman Qatar Hall of the Thanagarian police force. And he says, you're under arrest. And he says, why am I never happy to see me? And we see that it's next, and High Speed it's called. But when I've looked at this here, I studied kind of the background a little bit. It looks kind of like there's some slums in the background, maybe a little bit. And it looks like, but there's like these flying type ships, these things like that. And this guy looks very futuristic. He's wearing the Hawkman symbol. And he's wearing his trademark green and gold headdress. But his wings almost look like they're metallic, and they're made out of metal. And behind him is a statue. And it looks like they could be standing on this statue. And I'm just going to take a wild guess that that's Hawkman, right? And so this is what we see here. Or who I don't know, maybe it isn't Hawkman, who knows, but anyway, it looks like it could be in the future, just because of the way the gun looks that he's got, and it could just the way those things in the background are flying around. So he may have been pushed into the future to this version of himself. And he obviously, I don't know what's going to happen. If this guy's saying you're under arrest and whatever, what's going on, why doesn't he look at him and say, hey, you're wearing the same thing I am? So we'll see what happens in the next one and see what's going to happen here. I want to know what those constellations were, what kind of significance those are to him, and what he got from that. If that was supposed to be a clue, what kind of clue was that, and what did he gain from that? So let's find out in the next one. This one was actually really good. The artwork was cool. I liked it a whole lot, especially this page here. There's so much in this page here that I got from it. I think this was probably my favorite page of the entire book. One of my favorites here. If I'm going to give this one a rating, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. It was really good. It intrigued me. I haven't been keeping up very well with this book, but I think after reading this one, I'm going to continue reading it. That's going to be my review for Hawkman number 3. Let's jump right into Superman number... is it number 2? I think so. I think it's number 2. Let's jump into Superman.
My name is no. My sign is no. My number is no. You need to let it go. You need to let it go. Need to let it go. To the I to the no. My name is no. My sign is no. My number is no. You need to let it go. You need to let it go. Need to let it go. Down to the I to the no, no, no.
All right, we got Superman number 2. Or can you call it Superman number 2? Because it's continuing the story that Brian Michael Bendis has been writing about since he's been on. Action Comics, Superman, they all have the same story. It's the continuance of that same story where you got Rogol Zar. They're in the Earth is in the Phantom Zone. Rogol Zar is in the Phantom Zone. Superman has been lighting fires, or maybe he hasn't. There's some weird group of people who are behind it. So what is it? Who is it? Where is it? Why is it? That's my question to all this stuff. But we open up this book here, and we get the Tamarinians and the Thanagarians here, and they're kind of they're and it says, you know, years ago, and they're gonna fight, and you know they're saying, you know, the Thanagarians are here, and he's like, oh well, they lost their mind completely, you know, we're ready for whatever madness they can bring. And he's like, and they're about to fight, and they, you know, he says for Tamarin, and then they say, oh man, he brought Rogol Zar. They said retreat, and they're like, what? Why do we need to retreat? And then you see this really cool page here, this opening page, and you know, and it's a really awesome page. This is probably one of my favorite pages here, where you see the Thanagarians and Tamarinians, and they are all fighting, and Rogol Zar's coming in, and he's you know, taking people out, and these things like that, and it's really cool. Then we see Superman here, and he's talking about, you know, and he's thinking back, and this is what we see with Brian Michael Bendis and his books, right? We see him, it's a lot of words, it's a lot of thought and narration boxes. So this is what we see here. He's talking to himself, and he's thinking back. He's, Green Arrow once asked me, was it Green Arrow? Yeah, he says Green Arrow asked me, you know, your life must be hell. He said, hell? Why? I asked. He says, you know, actual hell, because you can never turn off your super hearing. You cannot unsee the madness this world has with your supervision. He says you can't stop seeing and hearing all the horrors of the world. And he says, first of all, yes, I can turn it off anytime I want. I don't, and I never will. He says, but I can. We all can. I could leave this planet and never come back. And yes, some days it does feel like madness. The screams for help never stop. The hate never stops. And then he says, you know, oh, and the ignorance sometimes never stops, and it just breaks my heart. And it was my wife who pointed this out. And I just want to back up here. So while he's thinking all this stuff and talking about this stuff, he is flying above the planet, and he's stopping the shuttles from falling to the Earth, and satellites from getting blown to bits and things like that, saving people in it, right? This is what we saw in one of the last books, right? Now he's saving, it looks like he's saving people from helicopters, and it says Gotham News and things like that. So he's saving ships, and he's plugging up volcanoes, and he's, you know, we see these masked robbers and that things of that nature. All right, we see all that kind of happening as we read these thought bubbles. And he says, she said, everyone knows there is suffering and hurt and war and disaster all the time. Somewhere someone is out there hurting someone else. People help people reach out more times than not. A scream and someone nearby helps before I can even lift a finger. People do their jobs. It's stunning to see, really, really beautiful, he says. The police, firemen, EMTs, politicians even. Politicians, yeah, okay. And he says, nothing is perfect, and it never will be, but the world works. Even during emergencies, tragedies, and sudden disasters, especially during tragedies, emergencies, and sudden disasters. Like, really? Okay. And then he says, you know, Not all the time, and not everyone, but billions and billions of times a day the world works. Billions and billions. I explained it to Ollie that what I get to see and hear every day, the sight and sounds of the billions of people trying, does that sound like hell? Well, that's not what I get to hear today. Today is no. If I were gonna, I think if I were to throw, if there was a sound, music to throw to this or something, I'd probably put that song in here that my daughter sings all the time. That My Name Is No song. Anyway, so he says, I'm not going to say this day sucks. I refuse. He says, I am a professional award-winning journalist, and I can come up with something describing that fact that the entire planet Earth has somehow been sucked into the nightmare dimension Krypton called the Phantom Zone. That is more poetic and illustrative than suck. The entire science of the planet's existence being violently challenged, and I have no idea how much longer everything can hold together. I had no idea the Phantom Zone was as big enough to fit a planet, even 7 billion. But there it is. And the Flash is losing his mind. It says John Jones and the Martian Manhunter can create a psychic link between the members of the Justice League, but only if we ask. John, I think we need, the League needs to be linked up, he says. And then here we go. We see a really cool page here where we see Justice League members and, Plastic Man. I don't know. He's probably not my favorite. Anyway, so we see, he says, this is Batman. Tell me you know what exactly this is. Aquaman says, the oceans are bubbling. Hawkman says, has anyone seen Green Lantern? And Wonder Woman says, I have my hands full here in London. The Flash says, we know it's you, Batman. You have a very distinctive voice. I should have used my Batman voice, he says. And then Plastic Man says, how long can Earth continue to be Earth if it's no longer rotating around the sun? And Barry Allen says, wait, what? So that's funny. And he says the Phantom Zone, the place so awful, it's where Krypton law put things a far advanced civilization didn't know how to deal with. And then you see Rogolzar here, and this, I thought this was cool. If nobody likes any of these thought bubbles or these narration bubbles, I thought this was cool because we see here Rogolzar, and now it's Rogolzar's thoughts, and he's got these black thought bubbles, right? And it says, this is where they throw their trash. And you see Supergirl and Superman, they're all flying up out of the atmosphere, and Rogolzar's there, and this is where she's got the Phantom Zone projector. And he says, it took me a moment. At first I thought I was being offered a warrior's death. I came to Earth for my righteous purpose of cleansing the galaxy of the Krypton curse. I knew death was an option. Death would mean failure, but death in battle is a warrior's death. And now you see Rogolzar and Superman, they both looking off to the side, and they have this stunned look, and he says, but no such honor, not for Rogolzar. He says, this is not the first time the winds of war had thrown me from battle into the total unknown. And then you see him get zapped, and he's thrown into the Phantom Zone here, he says. But it had been quite a long time since I had found myself anywhere this unknown. And he says, death, was this it? Something I knew? No. He says, that's when I knew. It was hardly subtle. But this is kind of cool because you see him falling to the ground here onto some kind of surface, and you see him looking around, and he's kind of searching around, and then you see this figure in the background, and he says, that's when I knew. It was hardly subtle. And he says, this is where Krypton threw their terrible secrets. And then you see a man there, and he's got the symbol on his chest, and he's got the same Superman cape there. And then he says, Rogolzar says, that seal, that family crest, the House of El, they leave me here with their broken dreams. And then you see some really cool panels. There's not much words here, and he says, kill you, or something like that. But Rogolzar just grabs this guy and smashes his head, like crazy. And this big old crack a kaboom, comes up, and that's when this guy just gets drained, and he says, I'll kill you, or whatever he says. And he says, that was satisfying. And he grabs the cape, and then he looks over because he hears a sound, and then the Earth, a second chance, another chance to cleanse the galaxy of its Krypton's rot. So now he starts to fly over towards Earth that has now entered into the Phantom Zone. He says, I will drag this Kal-El through the burning streets of his own home planet. No! And then something happens. And now you see Superman hovering above the planet, and some kind of electrical surge happens, and it's kind of in the atmosphere, looking like, I don't know what it is, but now you see, he says, I know, now Superman's here, I know what's out there, and I don't know what else is out there, or how much of it, or how long we can last. I feel good right now, but without Earth's yellow sun, I'm going to start to slowly lose my Kryptonian powers. Now Rogolzar says, this is opportunity. I need an army. It's been destroyed. And now we see Superman. He's going back down, and I guess he's in the Fortress of Solitude. And he says, no, Barry, it's in the new Fortress of Solitude. He says, well, I didn't get the new Fortress's housewarming party. Well, do you have to be here now, Barry? I'm here. He says, I just ran all the way from Antarctica because you told me to. I'm freezing and I have to pee, he says. He says, that's the Phantom Zone projector. He says, yes, that's the only one. And he says, I've the only one I've ever seen. It looks too small to push an entire planet through. He says, yes. See how I figured that out? Because I'm a scientist. Okay. So he says, how would I? He says, no one. Oh, Keelix is alive in the new place? Of course he is. So now Barry Allen, the Flash, he's sitting here and guessing and kind of thinking of who could do this. He says, is it Lex Luthor or Darkseid or the Joker? What's going on? And he's like, how long can the Earth sustain itself? As long as it's in this Phantom Zone. And they kind of don't know right now, And I guess Barry Allen kind of gets exhausted, or something happens, and he starts to fall. And Superman catches him. He says, I got you. And he says, Superman, this is Batman. I feel a wild discomfort in my chest and my bowels. I don't know. I don't know. Should we insert a joke there? I'm just going to leave it at that. He says, I forgot he was there. And then we got this thing, they kind of, there's a little funny moment here. He was like, I have to pull the Batmobile over, and Barry Allen says, I hear Batman. It's the Justice League Psychic Link, and Barry Allen says, unsubscribe. He says, you told me to keep the line open. I know, John, I forgot. I think I forgot which Flash I was for a second there. And he says, and then you see Superman here, and he's kind of thinking to himself. He says, my friends are falling. My planet is in immediate danger. We're all surrounded by unknown enemies. Sorry, guys. And it's right there that it hits me. I may never see my family again. And that's it. That's it. It says, next, Rogolzar's army of the Kryptonian damned. So does that give us a little insight of what Rogolzar is going to do? He's going to go and get all these people that are in the Phantom Zone, come together, and then go fight Superman and the Justice League. And what's going on? I want to know how long the planet can survive in this Phantom Zone, if there's even anybody alive still, because you need the moon, you need the sun, They need gravitation, all this stuff that the sun and the moon do for us. And it's no longer there. And Superman is going to be depowered because he doesn't have a yellow sun around to power him up. What's going to happen here? I want to know how... what's going on? I want to know more. I need more. This story is actually... It was kind of hard to get into. Maybe the last few pages were better than the beginning, but I did get into it a little bit more than I thought I would. If I was going to rate this one, I would give this one a solid 7. 7 mostly because the artwork and those last few pages. I'd probably say 6.5, but because of the artwork, it jumped me right up to a 7. Because I like it. The dialogue, I always get the dialogue. Brian Michael Bendis is always a little confusing for me because it doesn't really flow for me. Maybe when you open it up as a trade paperback or something like that, and maybe then it will be, make more sense as you're reading it in its entirety. But when you're reading it book to book, you gotta kind of backtrack a little bit. It's probably why he gives us that little excerpt in the beginning of what's been going on. So that's going to be my review for Superman number 2. Next, we're going to be having a really good one. I liked it this week. We're going to have Detective Comics 986. This was one of my favorites here of the week. I haven't really been getting into, the Detective Comics that much, but it's actually a really good one, guys. So stay tuned for that one, and let's check that one out. All right, Detective Comics 986. This week on this book, guys, is really good. It's probably one of my favorites of the week. I probably said that a lot, right? But anyway, last time we read this book on 985, we were supposed to find out who Karma was. We found out that Batman actually created him, right? But this issue, we actually find out his name. Pretty cool. But is it very significant? And is it really somebody? Whatever. But so we do see some kind of cool stuff here in this issue. We see some things that I was like, dude, really, that's really scary. We'll get into that here in a little bit, and I'll let you know why I was a little scared of this issue. And it actually made me, get a little paranoid for anything for myself. Anyway, so I'll get into that here in a little bit. But this issue was probably one of my favorites again. I said that again. But this one was a really, really strong issue. Let's jump right in. So we open up with the colleague of the reporter who died on the last time. She got burnt up, right? So he goes in there and he's, it's only 2 hours from the deadline set by the individual responsible for the kidnapping of the students earlier today and the brutal murder of my colleague Catherine Kistner. All of Gotham is asking the same question tonight. Where is Batman? Then you see Batman, he's suiting up and he says, Alfred, put the signal breaker online. And you see people in their living rooms and they're watching this and they're saying, and there's people out there in the field reporting and asking different people if they're really here to protect us, they would give their lives for our boy. Batman, please do something. So you see people there, they're pretty upset because their kids are one of those kids that were on the bus. And, now we see a panel with Alfred here. And he says, those parents need to know where I am. Show them. And Alfred says, with pleasure. And he starts to click on his computer. And then you're now in the living room of a young family here. And he says, Mom, Dad, look, this, I think it's a young boy or a young girl. I don't know. Anyway, They're looking out the window, and it says he's going to save them. This is what made me very paranoid and made me want to put tape over my camera here of my computers. I actually got 2 computers here where I record, and I've got cameras over them. I really want to cover up the cameras on my phone because Batman here takes control of everybody's phones, computers, TV screens, everything that you see out in Gotham City that is lit up. Just think, like Times Square where they have all those screens. Just imagine now all of a sudden you see a bat symbol pop up on that screen all over every single screen that you see out there. That's what he's doing here. And you even see it on somebody's phone here. And that's what made me feel a little paranoid because that's creepy, right? Didn't we see something like this in the Dark Knight trilogies and in the Dark Knight or whatever, where we see him take control of people's phones to find the Joker in that movie? This is what we're seeing here. This is his signal breaker or whatever. He goes and puts his symbol on their phones and on every TV screen. I'd be pretty upset if the bat symbol popped up on my computer right now as I was recording, because then it would ruin all my recordings, right? And I'd be talking about him. But anyway, I'd be pretty upset if I saw this on any of my screens, because what if there was a moment where I needed something, or if I was doing something important, or if my wife or kids were doing reports on something, or if they were on an important phone call, and then all of a sudden Batman pops up, or if somebody, so what if somebody in that moment is calling 911, or talking to the police or something in that moment? Or what if police officers are using their computers to, catch a criminal or something like that, and Batman's signal pops up? For how long is it going to pop up? You know what I mean? So I get why he did it, to let everybody know I'm coming. Don't forget about me. Anyway, so now we are back in the penthouse with Black Lightning, and you got Barbara Gordon there, and you don't really see the signal around, but you just see, right now we only see Barbara Gordon and Black Lightning. There's a reason for that, I guess. So he says Bruce has style. I'll give him that. Black Lightning says Barbara, get Cassandra. We need to make a plan. She says, I told her to go. He says, you did what? She said, Duke's still recovering, but Orphan can help Batman. She knows the recon. Bruce traced Karma's transmission. I piggybacked it from here. He says, and you made that call without telling me. Whatever you feel like you need to prove, you need to let it go. And she says, me? You're not the one of us who... you're not one of us, Metropolis. This is Gotham, and you don't make the rules. So so we kind of get this little thing back and forth, right? She says, I can go with you, or let me help. And she says, oh, you've helped enough. Stay here. I don't need you to worry about keeping you alive. She says, sure, stay here and do nothing, because that sounds like me. And immediately she jumps on the computer, and she starts to jump and starts to talk to Orphan here. She says, Batgirl, Orphan, do you copy? And Orphan, in her broken English here, obviously she can. She only has this broken speech, right? She says, here. And she says, remember, once you're inside, you'll have to move fast. If Karma can read minds, then he'll know you're here. You're there. And she says, want him to know. And she jumps off this the building and jumps into the building where he's believed to be, and Batman's there, comes up behind her, and he says, Karma has a bomb rigged to the children. I'm killing all the signals in the area in case he has a mobile detonator. That means you won't have Batgirl in your ear. And then boom, everything gets blown up, right? No, that doesn't happen. Because if Karma could read minds, he would know that they are there. He would know that Batman now just said it out loud, that he's killing all the signals around, so that he can't blow it up with a remote detonator. If I were Karma and this is what I wanted, to blow up these kids and piss Batman off and create chaos, that's what I would do, right? as soon as I hear that, and because I'm reading his mind, or is that what's really going on with this mask that Karma has? Is he really reading minds, or does the mask just tell him what is about to happen, or show him what's about to happen? So kind of like a premonition kind of thing, or what? We still don't know the rules of this mask. We don't know if he can see into the future, or if he's been into the future, or if he just can read minds, or if he's, a few seconds in the future and then he kind of gets reeled back and then it happens. Who knows what it is? We don't know. But if he could read their minds, wouldn't he just hit that button and everything will blow up in that precise moment? That's what I thought. What I would think, So now you see Batman click a button, and now Batgirl's like, Orphan, are you there? Orphan. And she says, Bruce? I thought she was using code names. Anyway, she says, leave Karma to me, save the children, follow the light. And what does he mean by follow the light there? Now we see the kids, and they are all in a circle, all their backs towards one another, and in the center of that is a bomb. And there's wires coming out, and it's connected to each of their hands. So you get the sense that if any of them move or any of them try to get untied, it's going to rig the bomb to go off. Orphan throws a bunch of these little smoke bombs, and she comes in and she says, "No fear, no cry." That does sound like a reggae song. She says, "I am help." And then there's Karma and Batman, and they are facing one another in the next panel. He says, "I can hear your mind, Batman. Your concern for the children, for the one you call Orphan, and your hatred for me. Come to me, Batman. There is no hiding here for either of us." And then Batman says, "Fleet Del Mar, I know who you are, and you should have stayed in Markovia. But I want to show you all the things I've seen. After your bats took my eyes," and then he takes the mask off, and his face is gruesome, and it looks like Spawn's face, like hamburger face, right, guys? That's the best way possible I can explain it. He's got these scars, and he looks like he's got tons of scratches on his face, and it just looks like tore up meat. And he says, "And that gas took my mind." And then he puts his mask back on, and he starts to, go towards Batman and jumps at Batman. And he screams at Batman, "You took my life," and they start to fight. He says, "I could still hear those bats, the screeching, the ripping at my skin, at my face, the wet with blood. But I deserved hell, didn't I?" And you see that he's just beating the crap out of Batman. Batman's taking a beating here, and I could only imagine the only reason he's beating Batman this way, because he doesn't look like he can actually take Batman on in a fight. I can only imagine that he's fighting him, and he can see his moves, or he can hear Batman thinking out his moves before he even says it. He says, "I deserved a man who had become vengeance, and where's that man now?" Now we go back with Orphan, and she's trying to figure out these wires, and she says, "Too many wires connected," and she says, "Follow light." What does that mean? Follow light. And these kids are crying, and she says, "What light? How to follow? If I break wire, explode. If free children, explode. No light to follow." And then you hear Orphan off panel, and then there's a little box telling you that there's only 42 seconds left on this clock. He says, and then you see Black Lightning behind her. He says, "He meant me, move back." So back up here. When Batman said follow light, if Batman, and they were up in the rafters, and this was right when he told her that he was turning off all the remote connections and all the electronics in the area, and Batman said follow light. If Batman was using those words, if he was saying follow light so that she can kind of decipher what he was saying, so that he didn't know that Black Lightning was coming, so that Fleet Delmar or Karma was going to believe that somebody else was going to be coming. Why would Batman even say it out loud that he was going to disconnect everything, or he was going to turn off all electrical devices, that Batgirl wasn't going to be in Orphan's ear anymore? So why would he do that? Why would he, use some kind of, code so that Karma wouldn't know their plans, but tell her that he was going to turn all that stuff off? That's one of those discrepancies there that kind of, I was like, wait, what do you mean? What the heck? Why didn't he do that? And so that's one thing that I did notice. And so now we see that Black Lightning here, he gathers up his electrical currents, and this thing goes off, and he's like, focus, Jeff, focus. And he grabs this, he holds on to this electrical current, the bomb, and he kind of like covers it in his electricity. Orphan says, Lightning, you can't. He says, do it now, go, get out of here. She cuts all the wires, grabs all the kids, and dips out, and this explosion happens, and he covers it with the electricity, and they all start to leave, and this starts to blow up. Now we're back with Batman. Batman's getting the crap kicked out of him, and he can't really fight back because Karma is he knows all of his moves. So this is what we see here. And he says, I just know. He says, I'm not better than you, Batman, because now he's answering, I'm not better than you, Batman. I just know your moves before you can. He says, I was going to kill all of them, but I think I'll keep Cassandra for myself. I've seen parts of her. She hides from herself. Hold on, let me read that back because I messed that up. He says, I've seen parts of herself. She hides from everyone else. They're still here, and they're beautiful. He's talking about her, he's talking about her thoughts and that she's hidden from everybody else, right? So, now she cracks open, she kicks open this door, gets all these kids out, and they kind of run out, and Black Lightning now, he can't hold this blast, and it blasts, and he says, Batman, there's no time, you can't stop it, and Batman, and Karma now says, so many thoughts, Batman, you're spinning, you can't control your own mind. And he says, so you can't know that I'm doing this. And then he comes at him and he kicks him and he punches him, and he says, that's all. And he smashes a batarang into his arm, and this blood spurts out, and he says, that's all. And Batman's all bloody and everything. Batman then says, initiate thrusters, and then Karma gets flown out of the building by this batarang that has thrusters on it. Now we're back with Black Lightning, and Black Lightning cannot contain this blast. And he says, Batman, save yourself. Then you see Orphan drive in on a motorcycle, and she screams to Black Lightning, Lightning, get on. And he jumps on, and he's still trying to they're trying to clear the blast, and he says, drive fast. And Orphan screams, Batman. Batman gets his batarang, shoots at the motorcycle, and he connects to it, and he says, I'll catch up. And then they dip out, they drive off. Batman's flying in the air, and then says, when Jefferson Pearson speaks, when Jefferson Pierce speaks, he speaks for me. And now he's back in the penthouse with all of these, with Barbara, Black Lightning, Signal, Orphan, or I think it could be the Batcave. And he says, are we clear? And Batgirl says, clear. He says, say it again, Barbara. And Barbara just turns around and leaves. And Black Lightning says, wait, Barbara. And Batman says, it's just fine, Jeff. I'm used to this. Welcome to Gotham City. And so he says, I didn't have to. You didn't have to. He says, it's just emotion. She'll be fine. Barbara's researched the origins of Karma's tech in Markovia. I need you to get Duke and Cassandra fluent. I'll find Fleet Delmar. Batman, listen, wait a second. You don't know how to beat him. He says, I know what I need to learn. And I have someone who can teach me. And this is one of my favorite parts here. this last page is probably one of my favorite pages, because then we see somebody here standing, and it is Katana, and she's got her soul sword, and that's who he's going to use next. And then that's it. It says next, outside Karma. This is pretty cool. I hope in the next issue that they have Katana down, because she's one of my favorite, and she's in the Suicide Squad and all this stuff. I just hope that they really get her voice down in this next one. I really hope that they don't do some weird stuff with her katana there and her soul sword. So that's going to be my review for Batman 986. If I was going to give this a rating, I think I'd jump it up there to an 8, just because I was very intrigued into this. I really like that they gave us who Karma was. They showed us his face all eaten up in like cooked meat, cooked ground beef. So, and I liked the whole dynamic between Black Lightning and Batman. I did like seeing Batman getting beat up. I did like that, and it shows me that Batman's a little bit more vulnerable than I'm used to, right? So that's why I like this book. So let's see what happens in the next one. I hope they do very well in the next one. I didn't have too many problems with this one. This one was actually okay, except for all those things where those discrepancies where he said he was giving away his plan, and then he like gave some code, and then but right before that, come on, you just gave away your plan. You told him that you're going to cut off all the electronics, but then you say follow light. Those kinds of things. That was the one discrepancy to me. So I think that those things, they didn't do too much to my. They dropped my points down a little bit. Maybe if now that I'm talking about it again, maybe I'll go 7.5, just because of that. Maybe even 7, but I think I'll keep it at 7.5. I'm gonna change it. Sorry guys, I'm going back 7.5, just because of that part. Before I was an 8. I think that dropped me down to a 7.5. So that's gonna be my review for Batman 986. Hopefully we get something better in the next one. All right, guys, that's gonna be the show for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2 weeks worth of books. We'll be back to our regular show where we do the big 2. We talk 2 books, or however many cool books we have that week from DC and Marvel, and then we'll just jump right into it like we usually do, and we'll have a few books from DC, a few books from Marvel, and then we'll have our reviews. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it.